in the early 2000s, I was working in Malta, and my grandfather passed away. And we were in the busy period during summer. And as soon as I told my boss about the fact that my grandfather passed away, he said, well, if you go to the funeral, you won't have your job when you get back.
Wow, the anti-kindness hero.
Welcome to the Kindness Factor podcast, sharing life-changing personal stories of the transformational impact of deep kindness. Hosted by
Dr. Ilya, the happiness doctor,
and Randy McNeely, the kindness giver. Thank you for joining us. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome to another episode of the Kindness Factor podcast. I'm Randy McNeely, known as the kindness giver, joined by my wonderful co-host, Dr. Ilya Gorgoris, the happiness doctor. And we are so privileged today to have an amazing lady named Kristina Vaneva, who has been a guest many, many moons ago, once upon a time. She is coming to us from way across the sea in Dubai. I should say it's evening for her there. So thank you so much for Kristina for taking the time to join us.
I'm so privileged and I'm so grateful for the second time invitation. And good evening all the way from the UAE, the Middle East, with temperatures of 50 degrees Celsius, which I'm not sure how much that is in Fahrenheit.
Like 120 degrees Fahrenheit.
It's a lot. Yeah.
It's scorching. It's been like that all week. So we're hibernating in the houses and the offices and the malls. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, we're truly an international podcast. I mean, Middle East, Dubai, that's awesome.
So yeah. I've been here for 16 years. So I call the UAE my home. I love being here, and I really feel connected to the country, to the people. It's a multinational environment, so there's over 200 different nationalities, just like in the States, of course.
Wow! Oh my goodness!
Just, inspiring. Okay.
I'm going to take just a couple minutes to give you a little bit more information about Kristina, and then we're going to let her, talk about an amazing new book that she's got. I'm not going to give the name right now because that'd be a spoiler, but she can talk about it. But we're going to talk about kindness and all kinds of great things. Kristina Vaneva is an HR industry leader. She has especially known for the field of employee engagement. She has worked with multiple organizations with the goal and the mission to both create amazing cultures and also help people to create amazing personal cultures in their individual lives. Kristina, there's so much more we could say about you, but we want to give you a chance to share just a little bit with our audience. First of all, why we invited you, because you're such an amazing kindness giver. You have always, ever since I met you, I've always known you. You've been someone who has been willing to reach out and care about people and inspire people. And you incorporate kindness in everything you do with your employee engagement. The whole premise behind a lot of the stuff you do is to show value and appreciation for people and to invite people to show value and appreciation for each other. So do you have a story, what I'm going to call a kindness hero story, someone who was so kind to you that it touched your heart and inspired your life, and so that and that has driven you to pay it forward? Do you have a story like that you can share with us?
I do, but it's going to surprise you because it's not a kind story. But the story I'm going to tell you actually inspired me to create kind workplaces. And so first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. It's the second time that I'm on this podcast, and a lot has happened in the last 3 years. I got married. We moved into our new townhouse. And of course, the most recent and I think the most anticipated accomplishment, I would say, is my book. My book is called Beyond Employee Engagement. It's right here. The blurry background doesn't help, but it's right here. It's available on Amazon. And what I wanted to share today with you, first of all, as well as our audience, is the premise behind the book. And this is also mentioned in the book. I'm not going to go into an extensive story because the readers can read about it. But in the early 2000s, I was working in Malta, and my grandfather passed away. It was quite sudden. It was maybe 2-3 weeks while he was in the hospital. And we were in the busy period during summer. And as soon as I told my boss about the fact that my grandfather passed away, he said, well, if you go to the funeral, you won't have your job when you get back.
Wow. The anti-kindness hero.
Wow.
Exactly. And this is what I wanted to share. Randy, when you asked me if I have a kindness story, it's actually the anti-kindness story. You're right.
But
Definitely.
there's a but in there, though. I can tell there's a but coming. But that
there's many buts and ifs and whens. It's a whole story. It spans over, I would say, about 25 years. Well, no, actually, he passed away 20 years ago. So it spans over 20 years. But in essence, I had a dilemma whether it was, to attend my grandfather's funeral or to stay back and really support the organization. And I'm not sure. I might not put you to the test and see what you think I chose. I might just blurt it out. I decided to stay on and work, and I missed my grandfather's funeral. It's been a long time since I felt bad about it. It always plays on my heart and my feelings. And my grandfather and my grandmother, my maternal grandparents, played a huge part in my upbringing. I grew up with them in Libya with my mom and dad. There's a lot of their, I would say their, not ethos, but their DNA, not the biological DNA, but everything around about me is stemming from them. It's inspired by them, especially my grandmother as well, who I talk about in the book. But I'll tell you a little bit about her later. So in essence, this story that took place 20 years ago really shaped or helped to shape my career. I was working in the entertainment industry and food and beverage at the time. And I took a vow. I said, whenever I start a career in my degree, because I studied communications at the time, I had a bachelor's in communications. Whenever I start my career within the field that I studied and grow in that field, I'm going to make sure that I do my best to positively impact workplaces and to create such daily instances of kindness, of employee engagement, of places where people feel like they matter, where they're heard, where they belong, and they really feel that there is at least one person who's really listening to them and who really cares about them and their stories and their challenges and what they're going through. And so,
Kristina, one thing that really stands out so loudly is that no employee in any country, in any industry, in any company should ever have to choose between going to a funeral for a family member that's dear to them or losing their employment. That is just absurd, honestly.
You're right.
I mean, nobody should ever have that be given that dilemma. That's one of the most terrible things I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
One of the things that though is amazing about you, Kristina, is
wow.
You had to go through that, right? They put you through that. They put you through that dilemma, and you could have really let it make you bitter, and maybe it did make you angry and upset for a while, but you turned that challenge. You've turned it into stepping stones for something much better. You've taken and you decided, okay, I know how I was treated and I know how I felt, and I'm going to do everything I can to inspire other people to do the right thing so that nobody else has to go through what I went through. Yeah. And I don't want other people to have to deal with that. And I think it's so admirable, so beautiful. It says a lot about you as a person, about who you are and the heart that you have, the determination you had to make lemonade out of a lemon. Really.
Lots of lemonade.
And you went into the HR, line of work, which is all about, people really. And the reason why you're so celebrated and rewarded and awarded, I know the accolades and all the things that you have achieved in your career, is because you brought humanity into HR.
I mean, it's very sad to hear that humanity needs to be brought into HR, but there are so many instances where HR is seen as the department that fires people, the department that maybe hires people, so that's a good thing. But a lot of the times, HR departments are feared in organizations. And it's not just because people may lose their jobs, but it's also because HR makes up the rules and the policies and the procedures. And oftentimes these rules and policies are not very human friendly and very human centric. So
it's kind of an irony, isn't it? Because it's called human resources, and the original reason for creating those human resources departments were so that employees would have a resource to go to be able to, learn their responsibilities, to learn all these other things. They're supposed to be there as employee advocates, but you're right. Too often they're the front people for the executives and other things, and they do everything that's in, and rather than looking for ways to help the employees and do what's in their best interest, they're always looking out for the best interests of the company. I mean, I shouldn't say always, because that's a blanket statement, but a lot of the times in companies I worked with, that's the way it was.
Yeah. And, in recent years, we've seen departments being renamed. I mean, it started off with human personnel, right? And it went into HR. And now HR is being called people and culture. But a lot of the times, this doesn't really match, or it doesn't add up. When you're talking about people and culture, you're really there to build the culture or to help create a culture and to sustain it and evolve it and continuously improve it. But the department itself has not changed much. Just the name has changed in some workplaces. Let me underline
they put new lipstick on.
Yeah.
Sometimes they have like a chief heart officer. Well, I mean, that's kind of relatively new, right? To put more of the emphasis on the human aspect of HR. And, and some people actually live up to that role, but others is just a different, you're basically switching chairs around, but the titles are different, but the culture is the same. But you've created amazing cultures in every company you've been in. Like the cultures that you created and it's a direct result of your hard work and your humanity and your heart. So can you speak to that a little bit about how did you get entire big cultures, big companies to change and to have such a beautiful and kind culture in the companies you worked with?
I love this question.
Before we go there, and I want to keep what Ilya just said in mind, but I want to jump back to something really fast. Somewhere in your upbringing, somewhere in your life, you said your grandfather and your grandmother had a big impact on and influence on your upbringing. That influence, that impact must have had some influence on the way that you decided to handle that situation at the hotel. Because I can't imagine that Kristina, the kindness didn't just all of a sudden pop into your heart. I imagine that you already had that in there, and you said, would it be too far-fetched to say that your grandparents had an influence on the kind of person that you are? Hello, my friends. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen today. We sincerely appreciate you. My friends, I firmly believe that every one of us has an inner kindness hero that is just waiting to be released every day. I'd like to give you a pathway for releasing yours. How? By helping us to flood the earth with as much kindness as possible, to create a global kindemic that spreads love, hope, and happiness. Like and subscribe to each of our social media channels listed in the description, and take out a subscription through Buzzsprout for as little as $10 per month. You can help us to continue to spread the kindemic by bringing you great content here and taking our transformative kindness message to a much broader global audience through the Kindness Factor Human Interest series. Release your inner kindness hero today. Thank you for your support.
No, not at all. I mean, you start kindness and all your values are being built, I think, even before you're born, but even more so while you're being born, right? I mean, while you're growing up, and if your surroundings continuously give you opportunities to be kind to people, and you then see what your kindness towards others, what it transpires to, and how that affects others. I think as a young child growing up in any country, in any home, these values, whether it's kindness or honesty or authenticity, they really help shape you from a young age and continuously throughout the rest of your life,
So
especially connected to them.
can you think of an experience or two where your grandparents impacted you and how that influences the way you are, the way you interact and build the cultures like Elia was talking about, the way you've done that in your organizations you've worked with?
Woo! I would need another 2 hours on this podcast. but
Something simple.
Yeah, so what comes to mind is my grandmother's kindness with animals. And I know we're always talking about kindness with human beings to
Kindness
one another.
Kindness.
Yeah, so honestly, she was incredible. She had the biggest heart when it came to humans, of course, but even more so to animals, because you don't see that much amongst the general population, kindness to animals, as much as you see, I think, kindness to humans, I think. So, my memories of my grandmother will always be her coming home from work. And we used to live in a compound in Libya, a gated community. And she would walk from her office down to our house, and it would take, normally, a normal human being would probably take 2 to 3 minutes, but she probably took about half an hour, because she would stop and interact with all the cats. She had, by the time she came home, she had probably about 10 or 15 cats following her, meowing, waiting for food. And just the love and the kindness that she showed to these cats, to the baby kittens that were being born. I think that had a very, very deep influence on me. So not just to human beings, but I think to animals as well. I think it's interesting to kind of, look back at what has shaped us and what continues to shape us from the sense of ancestry. And it's something that I'm always very thoughtful about, or mindful, how I grew up, what environment I grew up, who shaped that environment, and how I continue to create that for humans and for animals around me too.
So how does that impact what you do now with your, like, coming back to what Elia was talking about, asking about how what you're doing and how did you get into building the cultures that you're building, working to build the cultures that you are?
Yeah, and I'm very curious, like specifically, if you have to name, like, what are the top 3 things that you do consistently for the employees, for them to feel valued, seen, loved, even perhaps? What are the, like, your secrets, in essence, that you create those kinds of cultures that you've been so, acknowledged publicly with awards and so on? What are your top 3, would you say?
You know what? I love the fact that you used the word loved when you said people not only feel heard and seen and acknowledged, but loved. And not too many leaders would, or managers, or even supervisors would be in a position to showcase that, maybe because they want to have a little bit of a distance between their employees. But for me, anyone that I work with, so first of all, the secrets, but anyone that I work with, and this goes back to the question of what is your advice about kindness. So my first secret is listen. People love being heard. They love being listened to authentically, as well as with intent to also help or give good advice, not just with the intent of judging. A lot of times, as leaders, managers, HR professionals, we often listen to judge and to make a decision based on what has happened in the situation. For example, it could be an employee relations issue, or it could be a situation that someone has at work with his manager, who might not be a very nice person, or maybe they just don't gel well together. So and I think this is one of my biggest strengths, is really listening with intent. I think listening as a skill is is not well practiced or is not well taught, and it's not underlined enough. Yes, I talk a lot, but I also listen a lot as well, and I listen well. The second, probably secret, if you want to call it, or quality for with me is really connecting on an energetic level. And
Can you explain that a little bit more? Yeah. What do you mean by that?
So I like to, I mean, without sounding weird, but I like to touch. So I might hug someone or hold their hand or really give them a nice hug. And in an environment where it's multicultural, I think that really passes off well. Of course, you need to know which cultures, especially, I mean, as a woman, it's not as difficult as being a man, because a man needs to be a little bit more cautious about how he goes around hugging women, for example. But as a woman, it's all right to hug another woman without her feeling threatened. But then we have another case here of hugging a man and him feeling something else, you know, thinking that there might be something else more. But let's put that aside. So it's really connecting on an energetic level. A lot of the times people, when they first meet me, they've never heard of me before. They've never seen me before, and I get this a lot. And I don't realize it because I live with it, right? Their comments are, "Oh my God, your energy is so great. It's wonderful. It's so strong. Your presence in the room is really felt." And I mean, this could be because I'm an outgoing person and I'm an extrovert, but it also could
No,
be.
I think it's more than that, actually. It's your heart. And like your beauty, the inner beauty, the light that you have inside, the love that you have for people inside, the kindness that you have as part of, really, I feel like part of your DNA shows, and people trust you and they feel comfortable with you and they feel safe with you. And those are, those are some of the most loving things we can do for another human being, is to listen and to hold space for them and make them feel safe.
Yeah. In fact, one of my core strengths when I took the assessment of VIA, Values and Action, a few years ago, when I was doing my master's in positive psychology, in the top 5 strengths, one of my strengths and my core strengths is love and appreciation of beauty. And so I think those go really well together. And I was going to say safety and security, but you said it instead of me. So that would be something else, possibly my third secret. But I think, everyone is an individual with their own unique ways of ways of helping people feel safe and loved and heard. These are just my ingredients, my spices. But I'm sure that everyone who wants to be kind, who wants to make a difference, has their own personal recipe, their own secret recipe, if you call it, to really create a positive impact on people's lives, whether it's personal or...
Yeah, you called it your 3 spices, but I think they're universal. Who doesn't want to be listened to with intent and authenticity from somebody else? Who doesn't want to connect on an energetic level with somebody else? And we know physical touch. I mean, we don't need to go to the Harvard studies and what physical touch and hugs do and holding hands do. And then creating a safe space for your employees as an HR leader. I mean, that's the trifecta. Who wouldn't want to be in your presence, Kristina, as a result of that? And the fact that you've been able to push that and implement it in large organizations is not easy. Randy has worked for large companies. I've worked for large companies. That's not an easy thing to do. And the fact that you've done it is kudos to you, honestly.
Well, and here's the beautiful thing. Now she's distilled all that wonderful knowledge down into this beautiful book that she's just putting out. It comes out in August, right? It's got, what's it called again? Beyond Employee Engagement.
Yes.
And it comes out in what day is it going to be fully published? You can pre-order it now on Amazon, by the way.
Actually, you can pre-order it on all the platforms. It's available everywhere, and it comes out on 8/8/24. Let's summarize it. The book talks about all the different touch points of the employee journey. And it talks about how anyone in a supervisory position, managerial position, leadership position has the power to create that positive impact. So You don't need to be an HR professional. Anyone that has a team must and is responsible for their employee experience, and so it's a lot beyond. It's beyond work, actually. So we talk about, or I talk about in the book, how the fact that the employee experience affects the customer experience. We all know that. It affects also your investor experience, but it's beyond that. So the employee experience, the experience you have as an employee will affect the experience that your family has, or your loved ones, or your neighbors,
True.
your community. And
Yeah.
through community, we're talking about society, So I'm talking about the fact that workplaces now, more than ever, have the responsibility to create that employee experience, not just for their employees and their customers, but for society as
I
a
love
whole.
that.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
So if our audience wants to connect with you, Kristina, where's the best place to do that? How's the best way to do that?
Oh, well, I'm available on many platforms. LinkedIn is one of the places where I'm quite active, but I also have a website. It's beyond-employeeengagement.com. Perhaps we can leave it in the comments as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
You got it.
Yeah, and by email as well. My email, I'm reachable. It's on my website as well. But yeah, I would love to hear from anyone who's really wanting to connect and talk about employee engagement and kindness and the employee experience. And I really thank you for the opportunity.
And Randy and I are happy to support you and spread the word of when your book comes out on 8/8/24. So you got that.
Absolutely. All that information will be in the description. We want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We want to thank our audience for taking the time to join us. And we look forward to another great conversation next week. We want to wish you a wonderful week. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And remember, with kindness,
everybody wins. And Kristina Vaneva is the perfect example of that.
Yep.
So thank you, Kristina, for being on our show.
My pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.